I'm going to show you the only handful of loose cannon clips you'll ever need to see.
I'm feeling romantical.
Yeah, that's what this weapon is all about. This weapon takes everything I like about Demo Man and turns it into an aphrodisiac. Just listen to the sounds, man. Oh, it's so good. Alright, so what's the deal? What is there to talk about? Well, I think that this just may be the most interesting and unfortunate unlock for Demo Man there is. I'll get back to why I think it's kind of an unfortunate weapon in a little bit, but let's talk about the fun bits of the loose cannon. The loose cannon is an unlock for Demo's primary slot that changes up how you use your grenades. As I'm sure you're aware, the only time a Demo Man whips out his primary is when he needs immediate damage, or if he runs out of his other 8 100 damage bombs. But with this thing, I feel much more inclined to use it as an actual primary instead of a backup tool. And what would possess a Demo to do this? Running your grenade launcher as an actual primary is heresy in the Church of Schnapps. So let's have a look at some of the stats real quick. First positive stat on the list is a 20% faster projectile speed. This sounds pretty nice, and on a Demo Man primary, it can make the class significantly easier to play. But for the loose cannon, this speed up actually means nothing, as these cannonballs end up being the same speed as stock. I guess this was just a tune-up to make them the same speed, so I'm not really sure why this was listed. But good to know. Thanks, Valve. I find it really weird that they list things like this that only bring the weapon back to status quo, but refuse to elaborate on other weapon mechanics, such as crit healing for mediguns or reverse damage fall off for the Crusader's crossbow. The loose cannon has this interesting mechanic where your projectiles are on a 1-second timer, which is the shortest fuse time for all of Demo Man's grenade launchers. No more sniping. Great. But you can hold down mouse 1 to shorten the fuse time, and upon releasing that same button, your cannonball will only have the remaining fuse time you let it leave your weapon with. You can even hit people around corners if you time it right, which is kind of funny. Alright, but this still seems incredibly mediocre. Less range and less damage. Why would you use this? Well, if you time your fuse right, hit your target dead on, and the ball explodes immediately after, you deal mini crit damage at about 131 damage while displaying a unique donk effect above your enemies' heads. It also plays this sound that is orgasmic to the ears. Ever heard of the brown note? This shit's the white note. I refuse to have an unmuted microphone while I use this weapon because it would demonetize my channel. Now you have to time this almost perfectly, and if you don't, you'll just bash your enemy with a 50 damage bowling ball as they don't explode on impact. This one single effect of the weapon is fantastic. As I've already described, hitting double donks is incredibly satisfying and really effective, whether it be one-shotting light classes or making healthier classes realize their mistake of entering your range. And yeah, you can one-shot light classes. It's such a cathartic feeling to liquefy a scout in one shot when he thought he had the upper hand. And it's not necessarily unfair to the scout either, since hitting these close-range donks can be deceptively hard. Having to dodge a scout that's within kissing distance while desperately trying to run your fuse down to the perfect length is really exhilarating, making for a satisfying challenge. On the topic of charges, I should mention that the explosion damage of the double donk is not affected by damage fall-off since it is dealt in the form of a mini-crit, but with fancier text. The cannonball itself is affected by damage fall-off, however, meaning that sometimes light classes just won't die. But this is a pretty rare occurrence, and more often than not, you can blame their annoying insistence of living on overheal rather than damage fall-off. But I think it's worth mentioning here so that I don't get an angry comment saying that I'm a snake oil salesman for a TF2 weapon. Okay, now it's time to complain about this weapon a little bit. There is one stat I haven't mentioned up until now, and that is this line of text right here. Cannonballs push players back on impact, which obviously means that when hitting someone with this ball, you send them flying. This isn't just some minor annoyance either. This is a mechanic that when used effectively can define the flow of a whole match with little to no effort to the Demo Man. If you know where this is going, then you've probably been a victim of this nightmare before. So for starters, the loose cannon has enough knockback to send heavies flying backwards. Heavy relies on his positioning like we rely on oxygen for living. The best way to increase your effectiveness as heavy is to position yourself in a good area where you can support your team with your suppressive fire, and thanks to the heavy's native knockback resistance, it's hard to get him to move from a good position, unless you're using the loose cannon, in which case you can just look in this guy's general direction and double donk him, which is really easy to pull off on heavies. You don't even have to perfectly aim at his feet or anything. You can just double donk his lower midsection and he'll move a significant distance away from where he was comfortable. And that can lead to the heavy being drastically out of position, which can give your team a pretty sizable advantage. Now that's fine and dandy. You are a soft counter to heavies anyways, so if you don't forcibly make a heavy reposition, you'll end up making him leave the mortal plane. But what if I told you that you can be more than a mild annoyance to fat Russians? Let me ask you a question. Do you like being evil? If you remember, the stat mentioned that the cannonball deals knockback on impact, meaning that whether or not you take damage from the cannonball, you're still going to be knocked back.
Have you taken a guess as to what I might be talking about?
Yes, that's right. At a pretty obnoxious range, you can completely stuff a stock uber charge. Or any charge really. To put it lightly, this is awful. I hate that you can just do this to a combo that worked hard for these mere 8 seconds to try and help their team push through a point. At least when a pyro tries to stuff an uber, he has to get up close and personal, which is not an ideal position to be in against a player who can't take damage. Also, if for whatever reason you can't knock someone back by shooting their feet, then you can shoot their head. For some reason, if you do this, you can almost always stun the person you shot in place for a good half a second. And this isn't some slowdown kind of stun. This just completely stops you in place. And the reason for this, as far as I'm aware, is because the arc of the cannonball affects the direction of the knockback. So if the ball is headed downward and hits the top of an enemy gamer, it just hits them with an instant 500 Gs of downward force. It's kind of funny to see this happen because the guy you stun will just sit there. But to pull ourselves back into reality, let's stop and think about what the enemy gamer is thinking about right now. I don't know about you, but whenever I get stunned in place, I feel the need to blow off some steam by walking to the nearest window and chucking my firstborn out of it. I don't know if this is an issue for anybody else, but I just can't help but feel bad. And to my surprise, every Uber I stuffed was met with no complaints. If anything, I either got no feedback or just compliments for hitting double donks. So shout out to the TF2 community for not sending me death threats and teaching me new slurs. At least when I'm using this weapon. Also, you can screw spies over, which is pretty funny. One last thing I dislike and also love about the knockback is that sometimes you knock your opponent out of your effective range and can't follow up on your double donk. And other times you corner them or send them high in the air, which allows you to go for another super awesome air shot that will guarantee you a new chisel capable of cutting diamonds in between your legs. Jokes aside, this is really fun and really effective. Sending people flying out of your range is a relatively uncommon occurrence, but when it does happen, you have to remember that it's not just about the kills. It's about reminding the people you are fighting that they are mortal. Moving on, there's one more mechanic other than double donks that I adore about this weapon, and that is a really cool movement mechanic that this weapon gives you, cannon jumping. If you hold down the fire button and crouch jump as if you were rocket jumping, timed with the explosion in your face, you get this pretty large jump, which can be really nice if you aren't running a sticky bomb launcher. Although the self-damage can be pretty rough, I think for the health trade-off, jump scaring someone with a double donk from the heavens is worth it, and very funny. I'm sure that there is some crazy movement tech you can pull off with this and a shield, but if you read the name of my channel, you will find it has a distinct lack of the name Solar Light. My brain just hasn't grasped the power of trimping quite the way he has, so go ask him, I don't know.
Damn.
Bizarrely enough, I don't have a favorite secondary to pair with this weapon because it leaves you with a relatively blank slate to work with as long as you're comfortable with the cannon. So I'll just talk about the pairings in order of how much I use them. Starting off with all reliable, we have the sticky bomb launcher. This one goes without saying, if you need something to back up your aim, you can always run Demo's true primary. Having 8 powerful bombs with no strings attached makes you a terrifying force to be reckoned with. And just like in those questionable romance movies, you can start off your engagement strong with a good blast to the face and follow it up with a sticky surprise. Not much else to be said here, the stock is consistent, and that's what makes it a reliable pick when you're not in a particular mood. Next up we have the quickie bomb launcher. Oh, the quickie launcher. This pairing is so good. I get wet dreams just thinking about the combos. When you launch someone away from you, you have 2 options. Try for a donk air shot, which can be difficult and also less satisfying if the enemy is low enough health that you can't possibly hit a double donk. Alternatively, you can follow up your double donk with a quickie air shot or predict where they're gonna land. This pairing is like peanut butter and jelly. You have your slow high damage and your quick follow-up damage that can make up for targets that fly out of your reach. Last but not least, we have the Scottish resistance. This pairing may seem strange at first, especially since the loose cannon has to be slower than any other grenade launcher to remain effective, but that's part of the secret sauce to this pairing. Some of you big-brained individuals actually already pointed out the power of this pairing in my last video.
Set up your traps in a nice little corner and catapult any fools who dare approach you into the warm embrace of the respawn timer.
For the super defensive demo man, kinda like how the game describes him, this is the perfect pick. I didn't use the sticky jumper much, but if you like trolling, you can hop onto a 2-fort match and fly into the enemy battlements to one-shot free-to-play snipers. Very funny. 10 out of 10 pairing. To keep this video from being an entire analysis on Hybrid Knight, I'm going to only talk about the Tide Turner and my favorite Hybrid Knight sword to use with the loose cannon. I love the Claymore, or Claymore. It's just as fun as it is impossible to pronounce. When you land a double donk on someone, you can charge at them for a clean kill that instantly refills your charge, allowing you to either become more aggressive or use that charge to get out and reposition yourself for more double donks. Hybrid Knight is a lot of fun regardless of your primary, and with the loose cannon, you may be prone to Hybrid Knight Ascension. or missing all of your shots and dying mid-charge. It happens. Sorry for being very brief, but we'll go over more Demo Knight weapons in further depth when I make each sword and shield's respective video. Finally, we can move on into the little bit of strategy revolving around the loose cannon. If you like taking risks for higher damage, this is your weapon. I kind of enjoy playing defensively with the loose cannon, as aggressive targets are usually easier to trick into double donking positions. What? Pairing that high damage with some good traps can make you an unstoppable force on the flank. Even the choke suffers from your addicting choice of primary. It's very good at making people quickly change their minds about being aggressive. I complained about this earlier, but stuffing Ubers is also very powerful, and your team will be oh so grateful that they didn't have to put any effort into defending against it. Is that an Ubered spy? Pushing with this thing is also viable and much more exhilarating than a defensive playstyle. Taking out sentries with your stickies, then one-shotting the short king that built them feels like something out of a power fantasy game. And that's really what the loose cannon feels like. A power fantasy that makes you work for it. But pushing a point like Barn Blitz may not be the best environment for the cannon, as your building damage needs to be top notch for those especially stubborn teams. Besides the small issue of not having much building damage, everything else is essentially the same but with more fun attached. Your crowd control is still great as long as the center of a group is getting double donked. From what I can tell, your splash damage is not mini crit boosted, but you are able to double donk more than one person, allowing you to pull off some rare but really satisfying crowd control. In some closing thoughts, I think the loose cannon is an incredibly fun side grade to the grenade launcher. In comparison to stock, it may be a little bit less practical, and for those out of practice, it can even be a direct downgrade for a handful of games until they get the hang of it. That's just the nature of the loose cannon. Your fun, yet less consistent side grade. Although I shouldn't say the weapon itself is less consistent than stock, rather your timing needs to be much more precise to achieve your desired results. When you need a break from the somewhat repetitive grenade launchers, or maybe you find the damage of the grenades to be too little and want to roll even harder, you can always turn to the loose cannon. And that's all I've got to say. Thanks for making it this far in the TF2 Brain Rot review. If you'd like to see more of my unhinged ramblings, you can catch me live on this channel every weekend. I hope to see you there, and thanks for stopping by. That's all. See ya.
Wait for me. Riley, can you turn around?
Yeah,
Sorry.
come get this handsome scout, some healing. Just saw you fucking obliterate that pyro.
Yeah, I know.
Put his ass in the ground.